Hello, welcome back to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with Ashley and I had another conversation about surrogacy. And I really am enjoying these conversations. I loved where Ashley let me take it, and she was so fluent in her message. It was absolutely amazing, and I hope you enjoy it. Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. Despite the fact we've already been talking for a good 15 minutes already, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And I'm really fascinated by this subject. I was talking to a lady called Karina a few weeks ago, and about surrogacy. And I said to her that I literally, as a single guy who's now 50, I don't have any children. I literally am the Neanderthal in the room when it comes to this. Do you know what I mean? Like when somebody says to me, I'm desperate to have a child, I'm like, yeah, you're in the wrong company, because I've spent 50 years dodging having children. And not for, I don't have any outstanding reason. I just never grew up with this desire to be a father. I have friends who just, they wanted to be a father. My sister wanted to be a mother. My mum wanted to be a mother. My brother is the same, single, no children. We both never had a desire. My best friend Duncan never had children. I don't know if he ever desired to have children. I've never even had the conversation with him. So it does fascinate me, largely because, like, when I was talking to Karina, I realised I knew nothing about surrogacy or how it like developed and what it developed into. So could you just break? So the surrogacy that I thought I knew about, and I said when I was talking on the last time, was I deliberately didn't look into the information because I wanted to go in completely blind, because that's the best way I could guarantee, like, hearing and listening to somebody in terms of the education. So, like, where did it start for you?
So surrogacy, we'll go back and I'll out myself a little bit. I was very closed-minded. Before I knew what surrogacy is, before I understood what everyone went through with infertility, I was very closed-minded. If it was meant to be, it's meant to be. You naturally should have your children. Don't mess with it. No science, right? And then I was blessed enough to deal with secondary infertility after I had two of my biological children and my bonus daughter, and was very bitter. Like, hey, wait a minute. Like, we finally are financially stable and our marriage is good and we want to add to our family. And we couldn't, due to some of the medications my husband was on. And that's when I realized, like, oh my gosh, this is what people are feeling. This is what people are going through. And they may not have any children. I've got 3, right? My dream was always to have 6 children. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then I started to see family members that had hysterectomies after a child. Or I had a really good friend who went through chemotherapy and they didn't know if she'd ever be able to be pregnant. She had to freeze her eggs and create these embryos. And so I started to see how many people were dealing with this that had no children. And I just thought, I think I could do something about this. I had really amazing births, just all natural. I had very quick labors. My longest one was 6 hours, so I thought, well, God gave me big hips and easy childbirth. And I loved being pregnant. I worked till the day I go into labor and I go back to work a couple days later. Like, I could do this. And so that's when a friend came into the picture, the friend I mentioned, and she had just went through, she was going through chemo and they didn't know what they were going to do. And I thought, man, I'll just carry a baby for you. But we didn't know how that would work, right? Because everyone assumes, like, am I going to have a weird connection to this child? Am I going to long for this child I gave up, quote unquote? And I said, you know what? Look, I'm going to go and help a stranger. I'm going to learn everything about it. My personality is your type A, overachiever, oldest child syndrome. And so I thought, I'll just go learn everything. We will be able to go on an independent journey. We won't have to pay for an agency. It'll be great. And so during my first journey, I'm in my 3rd trimester. My friend calls me and says, hey, we transferred an embryo and I am like 14 weeks pregnant. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Well, they don't need me. They were a one and done family. And I thought, well, I went through this whole surrogacy so I could help a friend. And I thought, okay, I just, we'll go with it. And so got done with that surrogacy journey, and my intended parents asked me to do it a couple more times for them. But that's how I got into it. Was very close-minded. I was one of those people that was like, doing this is going to be bad. And why can't we just trust that God has a plan? And through the process of learning other people's stories, I realized that the doctors are gifted, right? The doctors are blessed with gifts, and this is all part of it. Like, it's not, and at the end of the day, I could have the perfect uterus, and that embryo could be the perfect embryo, and it still won't work. It's not 100% chance of success. And so there is still a God factor, at least in my beliefs. There's still a God factor to even IVF.
Yeah, I mean, I have an hypocrisy mindset to it, because part of me believes that things should be done in the natural order, right? But then when I apply that principle, I don't feel like that about medication, do you, David? And if you know somebody that's sick and ill, you want them to get the best medical treatment that they can get. Yeah. Right. So that's why I frame it as an hypocrisy mindset. Because it's like, so you don't believe in that principle, do you, David? You're a hypocrite. Because if you believed in that principle, you'd be like, nobody should get medical treatment. And you're like, no, you don't. You actually, I'm somebody that thinks we're blessed to live at the top of the medical tree. We have the best medication that the world has ever seen at any point in history. So, well, and part of that is the evolution of life. We're never taking life. We're always trying to give life, and we're always trying to expand and extend life. So that's why I frame it as hypocrisy, because I realise when I actually just apply a couple of minutes of thought to it, it's just like, no, you don't, you don't believe that. I do think this is an amazing miracle, and I do think it's a huge blessing that if you're able to give, like you said, people who are desperate for children, and the way that I've always understood it when with people that want children is that it's something so deep inside of them. Like I've always understood that I'm an anomaly because I've just never had that desire. And using the term desire is a really crude term, because it's like people don't desire children. It becomes an identity. They have to have them. And like you say, as a mother of three, three when you started, is you understood deeply what it means to a couple if they can't have a child.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly feel like the love you're able to give a child and the love you're able to receive from your child is just the most precious thing. I mean, I've got now they're 29. 23 and 19 of my own kids. And so watching them grow up, it's just, it gives me purpose, because that's how I was wired, right? Yeah. I have friends who are the most amazing funkles you could ever have, right? Fun uncles. They're good in doses. They're exhausted by the time they get to have fun with them, and they go home. And I think we all are wired in different ways. I think we're all wired to connect.
I'm an incredibly good uncle. I promise you, I could win a gold medal as the best inappropriate uncle.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, we're all wired for different purposes,
My niece said to me once, she goes, "You don't follow any rules, do you?" Not with you. No, I don't. No.
Yeah, I mean, I started out quite young, so I wasn't wanting a child at the time I was pregnant. But I felt I was 16, and I felt that if I was woman enough to partake in the fun events that cause children, then I needed to be woman enough to care for my child. Yeah. And so my son Ezekiel came a month after I graduated high school. And I feel like he definitely saved me. He was just the most, I no longer was living for myself. I needed to be a better human to live for someone else.
Okay. That's an interesting outlook. And the reason I say that, and if this comes out clumsy, I apologize in advance. Right?
I have thick skin, so go for it.
No. But what I mean is, that's an incredibly insightful, responsible attitude to have as a young mother, which goes in the opposite type of behavior that got you into being a mother.
100%. 100%. I had to man up.
No, but did you see what I mean? It's just like, no, you're 100% right, but you don't, as a stereotype, typically find that in people that kind of, end up pregnant young.
Well, I was an old soul. I was graduating early anyways. I had a job. I had bought a car. I wanted to get out of high school and make some money. Like I was doing my life. I was old enough. I knew better. Right. And through acts of its own, I find out I'm pregnant. I'm like, okay, we're going to reshift, but we never reshifted the goals. We just reshifted who was coming along with me.
Man, I like that. I like that though, because it's always one of those important things, isn't it? That when things happen in life, is how we actually say, well, what am I going to do about this, and where does it meet what I want?
Yeah, I did. I was met at 16 with a lot of people that were like, so I was actually, again, with my beliefs, I was actually involved in like the youth leadership, and here I am getting pregnant, and I'm, everyone I know around me is doing it. I'm the only one who got caught, and so, so there was like, you got your internal sin. Nobody knows what happens in your home when you go out and make yourself pretty on the outside to the world.
Absolutely.
And so I thought it was so hypocritical. Like I was the last one to even go down this route, and here I am, the first one busted. But that's always my life. Like if I do,
it's always the way, though, isn't it? You know what I mean? The one that resists the longest is the first to get caught.
Yeah. And the elders and people that are older, they didn't understand, and they had a lot of fear, obviously, right? Because the stereotypes have some truth, a little truth in them. Like there's things that come up, and so obviously I'm this young adult, and they're like, "Oh, your life is ruined," and I'm like, no, it's not. I was single, unfortunately. But I went through college. I think at 17, me and my son had our own little apartment that we found, this tiny little apartment we could afford. And it didn't matter. This was my life and I was going to move through it. But that's how my childhood was too, right? So I think, a little trauma in your life when you're growing up helps you to be a stronger person and more adjusted. So
no, it does. I mean, it's going to happen sooner or later. So, and I think sometimes you just have to take it as it comes and how it comes. And you said something interesting there, because like on the surface, every stereotype is true, but it's
not. I would say there's a hint, like, right, like a teenage.
I mean, literally the outline of every stereotype on the surface is true. Yeah. But so then when you examine the person within the stereotype, you see all the nuanced details that's like, oh, right, this is a different story. Yeah.
It could have won a lot different, and people probably assumed it would, but it didn't. It's been an amazing life, and now I have this amazing 23-year-old who's definitely the apple of my eye.
And that's great, isn't it? Because it goes from something where everyone's like, oh my God, to something you're just incredibly proud of. Like, you're doing like up there with the greatest achievements I've ever achieved.
I also was a pretty stubborn child. So if you doubted me, I was going to do it. Right. So like, oh, you think it's going to be hard? Well, you know what? Then I'm going to do it better than everyone, like I'm a very competitive child. An adult.
No, but it's good though, isn't it? 'Cause it's what helps you survive, and it's what gives you that faith in yourself. Like we were talking before I started the podcast about the skill sets of being off grid and stuff. And one of the things I asked you is, my belief was that a lot of it is because you have to develop skills to sort things out for yourself. Whereas, the biggest dilemma I have is if the supermarket closes before I can get to it. Because then it's like, well, which supermarket in my area is 24/7? Because I don't have a skill set outside of paying for goods in a supermarket.
I think it's amazing, though. Like, I mean, I lived in the corporate world and I lived in the continental US, and you can get anything you want, right? But yesterday I'm up on a ladder, climbing on a shed, trying to set up the tarps because we're having like monsoon rains and I don't want my animals to get wet, So it pushes. Like I constantly have a little bit of fear and then pushing through that, or a little bit of scaredness, or, not sure, or problem solving. When do most people I problem solve every day because there's something popping up.
Absolutely. And I walk past people every day who are anxious because they've got to go buy milk and there's somebody else in the aisle. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like this is modern living. People get scared because there's a stranger in the aisle and he's waiting behind you to get to the fridge to buy milk, and you're like, oh my god, is this guy? No, you're just in my way. But you're having a panic attack and I still need the full fat milk. You know,
it is. Humans are amazing creatures.
Yeah, we are. So moving forward, how then? Yeah. So how did it start? So is it 3 children of your own?
So I have my bonus daughter, who's my stepdaughter. She came into my life when she was 7. So I had my son, and I was a young teen mom, and I met my husband, who's been with me now for 23 years, when my son was about a year. And so I meet my husband, he brings his daughter with him, I have my son, and then we have one more child together. So by the age of 21, I had been done having all of our children, right? Yep. So I was like, okay, done. Now we move on to the next goal, right? Like hit the American dream of like own a house, by 25, I've got my 2, 3 children, and now we need a dog kind of thing. Yep. And so that's kind of where I was at. But I knew that, living in paradise comes with a cost. And we were not able to afford it. And so I just felt like I felt guided to go to Vegas, right? Like here I am saying, God's leading me to the desert, and we went there and we made a life, and my husband had a career, and I got into ministry, and was working, in that field. And I found out about surrogacy and was like, here's another way I can serve people. Obviously at that point in my life was a lot of, I can look back, because you were saying you do the hypnotist. So you work with people that have, mental health conditions. And I think that early in my life was still about proving, right? Proving as a young mom, be a good mom, proving as a young wife, I can be an amazing wife. I can be a provider. I can be all these things. I was just proving to look for self-worth. And I thought, oh my gosh, like what is more amazing than being able to carry someone's child and to be able to give that to someone. And so I signed up, and at that point I didn't even realize you got compensated. I thought like, they'll pay for like chiropractors and massage. It'll be the most comfortable pregnancy I've ever had. Right. Like, and I'm frugal. So I'm like, and I don't have to pay for all these things. And then I found out I could be compensated, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. Like I will be able to still work in ministry, because that pays like pennies in the love of Jesus. Yeah. It does not pay you to survive. it puts faith in your life. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I just fell in love with the whole experience. Like there is no bigger high than giving birth to a child and watching parents meet this child that they have waited for, wanted, and, it's so amazing, because I had dealt with a little bit of that secondary infertility, which we talked about a little bit before the podcast, of we wanted to have another child, but it just wasn't going to work out with my husband's health conditions. And so I got to heal that in watching this other mother heal from her multiple miscarriages and her losses. And I remember her grabbing this baby and holding him close and saying, I have waited forever for you, and I will love you always. And I just thought,
that's just beautiful.
Oh, it's amazing. Like, I think it was the biggest high, pretty close to me having my own children, but just get to see that, because you maybe see this. I mean, I may have a different outlook on it, but social media is so fake. And what we see people's lives like, and the positivity and the happiness and all of these things, but to see raw, pure joy, like emotions of sadness and happiness, and like just to get to see how raw that was, that's true connection with somebody else. And we have now been connected, for 7 years now, me and the mom. Yeah. We are friends. We love each other. We call each other family. And I had 2 more children for them, because that's my family. Yeah. They know Auntie Ashley calls them, and they get to go home with mom and dad.
Yeah. I do think it's beautiful. I mean, because social media is a funny thing, isn't it? Without the technology of social media, you and I wouldn't be able to share the story of surrogacy. The difficulty with social media is, I think, largely because it's in its infancy, is that people still will post something positive to try and get a positive feedback. and the only reason they're doing it is because they're seeking that validation. And as you were saying, that it's a funny thing in human nature, because if you don't have some desire to prove yourself, you tend not to have any seeds of ambition. But if you can't appreciate your progress, you're never going to be happy.
Yes. Yeah. And that's my,
and it's
that's
really
story of my life as well.
And it's an incredibly difficult one, because without needing to prove something to yourself, I think it's that subtlety, the nuance of, if you have enough love or enough validation, then you will be disciplined and motivated to do things because you believe you deserve them, and that you kind of have a duty to yourself to do them. Whereas the other one is when I'm going to show the world, and unless you really do something absolutely phenomenal, you're never going to show the world anything. And I've never yet met anybody, even people who are incredibly successful, who are truly satisfied when the root of what they were trying to grow was proven to the world who they were, because they just never get enough validation.
Yeah. And that's, I think, honestly, surrogacy can be addicting, right? Because it's so like, I did that and I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I have to do this again. Right. And so we went on to do a sibling journey. And it was even more amazing. And then they were like, we've got these babies, so we need a little bit of time. And I said, okay, fine. I'll help another family. That when you work in an agency, you fall in love with these families, and sometimes you don't have the right surrogate for them. And so often people who work in the surrogacy field will continue to do surrogacies because you fall in love with these families and you want to help them. And you're like, I'll do it for you. And so I did that with my second family, third surrogacy. And unfortunately, it wasn't the rainbows and unicorns, right? So in that match meeting, it is your first date and everyone's wanting to say what each other wants to hear. And you're putting on, it's a weird married at first sight, but instead we're going to have a baby. And so we all promised each other the relationship we wanted and the communication we wanted. And as we got through the pregnancy and we're starting the pregnancy, it started to break down. And it was like pulling teeth, so I'm like bringing out questions like, hey, how's your dog? And, tell me about your dog. You have a mom, and where can I pull commonality from? And so we struggled with that. And then COVID hits, and it's 2020.
Yeah.
And, they're not able to leave their country. And they're going to Cambodia, I think, for 2 weeks to quarantine in order to get to the US, where they'll have to quarantine to even to the hospital. And so it's just chaos. And so it started to break down, and it got pretty ugly during the delivery because this was their only embryo. They are 3 days away from making it to the US, and the doctors are saying, hey, baby's not moving around like he, should. So let's get him out because he's fully baked and he'll be fine. And they couldn't quite understand and grasp that concept. And so it broke down to the point of that was the first baby that I didn't hold after birth, after his parents got time. And it's the first baby I didn't give milk to. And we were not going to stay in contact, clearly, from how they had behaved during the delivery. And so that was when I was met with, and I do deviate, but it's going back to our point. That was where I was met with, did I become a surrogate to help a family, or did I become a surrogate because it gave me the good feels?
Yeah.
And really getting to the core of that and understanding, Ashley, if you're truly here to grow a family, then your feelings about not having a relationship with the family and the friendship and, the warm and fuzzies, then that needs to be pushed aside, because our goal was to bring another child here for this family, not for me to feel like I was a princess and an angel and so kind and so sweet. And I should, all the warm and goodness of it, but genuinely what it was. And so that was really, I think, while I didn't like the experience in the moment, I did realize, in that postpartum period, that was a really important thing for me to understand. Was I here? And what was my motive for being a surrogate? Was it the compensation? Was it the warm and fuzzies? Or was it genuinely because I wanted to help a family that had infertility? And so I think I came out stronger from that in understanding, no, I was here to help a family that, had infertility, whether or not we continued our relationship.
It's a difficult one though, isn't it? Because you had such a great relationship with the previous family, and you share that bond, that happiness, that love, that part, you just want that to be part of the whole package. So, and you're a human being, and you actually want the best for this family. You want the best for the child. You're doing everything you can, and part of that for you is like, we can just continue this great kind of like ball of joy, and just keep that ball rolling. So then when somebody's just like, no, we're not playing the game anymore, it's our ball and we're taking it with us and you're not playing anymore, that's always going to sort of suck. It's always going to be hard to take on board.
But it's like when people feed the homeless, right? Are you feeding the homeless to genuinely feed them? Are you genuinely helping them because they're in need? Or is it the endorphins you get in your body for knowing you helped someone, right? And that was that was that point after was, am I truly doing it to help? Am I having a servant heart, right? Like, am I serving these people? Am I doing this because I signed up to help them? And so, obviously always when we help someone, we feel better. And I had to realize that my feeling better and me feeling good about it was not going to be tied to their actions, but it was going to be tied to what I had.
I just think a lot of it is, it was just, you had so much fun, so much excitement with the previous family, that you just wanted them to have the same experience. So there's just that natural disappointment when they're like, no, we're good, thanks.
Yeah. And, and there may be some control issues that were, I was battling with at that point in my life, like, so I was like, oh, I can't control this. It's out of my hands.
Yeah, but I still think from listening to you, and, I can be completely wrong. It's just, a lot of it is you're just so excited for them. You want to, you want to share the excitement, and they're just like, no, we're good. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you're like,
and that's the side. I mean, there's many people dealing with infertility, and that's the thing to think about too, is like how many losses these families go through. Or, I know we see on social media, and we see in media in general, these rich families who they call social surrogacy, right? Like, they're choosing to do this because they don't want to do it, right? But the majority of the families we help, and the majority of the families I work with personally, they're normal families who are taking out second mortgages, or cashing out their retirements, or taking on several jobs to go through this process. And a lot of them, obviously, if they were a heterosexual couple, they created their embryos thinking they were going to get pregnant themselves. And now they've got these embryos, and now they need to figure out, okay, we've got to take it one step further if we want our child. With our dads, they know going into surrogacy, I'm going to need a surrogate. They know going into IVF and creating their embryos, hey, we're going to need someone. We're going to need two women to help us, someone to donate their eggs and someone to this baby for us. And so I think sometimes I see the heterosexual couples struggle, because I couldn't imagine, as the control freak I am, trusting another woman to carry my child and not judging what she's doing and eating and drinking. And, it's like, so I think there's a lot of battles that people don't realize that everyone is going through, but we're here for the same common core thing, which is to bring your child to this, to this world, and you to be, grow your family and have that parenthood,
And it must be incredibly difficult for them, because like you said, the myth is it's only for millionaires and billionaires, and that's just not the case. There's people that throw every financial resource that's available to them into surrogacy, and through all of that process, there must be in the backs of their mind, what if she won't give me the baby?
Yeah, that can be a fear. So common fears are, how do I know she's not going to do drugs and alcohol? Or how do I know she's not going to steal my baby?
Because I know there's a strict screening process, and you all meet in it, but paranoia and emotions are what they are. And if this, for these couples, this is going to be...
That's a valid worry. That's a real emotion.
Yeah, because the more important the outcome is to you, the more you have a worry attached to it.
Oh yeah. And so on that aspect, in the US, we have some amazing laws. And again, that's why a lot of people come from all over the world and so, domestically to do surrogacy is because we have several contracts in place. So here in the US, the embryo is considered the parents, whether they had a donor for the sperm or the egg or anything, that embryo belongs to the parents. And so even before we get pregnant, we have what's called a gestational carrier agreement, which basically outlines your responsibilities, my responsibilities, state statutes, the compensation, and then we go into it. Then at about 15 to 20 weeks, we do what's called a pre-birth order. And that one gets filed with the courts so that when that child is born, Vital Statistics automatically puts the parents' names onto that birth certificate in most cases. Now, in certain states, there may be a couple legalities that need to happen, but unlike genetic or traditional surrogacy, where that egg was the woman who was carrying the child's, here, because we have no DNA relation, it literally would be probably considered like kidnapping. And we could be charged with kidnapping someone else's child, Plus two, I'm going to be honest, at least for myself and the majority of surrogates, you have to be done having your own family. None of us are looking forward to taking a newborn home. Like, we are raising our own kids. Like, I want to deliver, go home, have some chicken wings, pizza, and a beer after all that time. I don't want to have to care for a newborn. They're hard.
It does seem to be, doesn't it? Because the lady I spoke to, Karina, she said she literally just considers herself the oven, and somebody else's someone else's bun. And this was the term she used. She says it's somebody else's bun. I'm just the oven. And she was just had so much fun having her own children. I'd love to be able to do it for somebody else.
I think that, a lot of us are able to compartmentalize, right? Like, it's not that we don't care for that child. So that's something that concerns me about the future. And we'll go into that. But we are growing these children. We're giving them emotions and we care and we try to create the most, important environment, and we poke at them and mess with them in our bellies, and they're hearing our voices, and we are trying to give them the best start they can have until they can be reunited with their parents. For me, I prayed over every single baby every day that they would just be able to have their most amazing lives and live their purpose. And that was my job. I worked in preschool at the time, and I loved those babies, but never would I have ever had those parents at the end of the year would I have told them, no, you can't move your child out of my grade. They need to stay in with me, right? Like, I cried for each classroom because I loved those babies. They were just so precious. And when I say babies, they're toddlers. But I would have never tried to keep somebody's child that way. And I was there hugging them, kissing them, loving them. And I think that your connection to some women, no connection to their child during the pregnancy. It's when they're out and you have to keep them alive and you're feeding them and you're raising them. And you have those nights where you're sleepless and you're looking at this child like, oh my gosh, what did I do? And they look up at you and smile. And that's that love. That's that connection, and I feel like I don't have that with these babies because I'm not keeping them alive outside of the womb. I'm not seeing their personalities, and I'm not growing to love them through the difficulty of raising children. It's more like an aunt. I care for all of them. I think they're great, but I'm going home and I hope I can see you here and there.
And it's like you said, though, because the whole process in the build-up is very black and white. It's very contractual.
Yes.
And I think, again, this is probably where the media and social media haven't been respectful to the process. That they'll pick the one time that, because also as well, I think a lot of people think about surrogacy. They think of like people like me, because I'm 50. And until I had the opportunity to previously speak to Karina and talk to yourself, everything I knew about surrogacy were headlines in the 80s and the 90s and probably in the noughties, where somebody like they just hired somebody, and then that woman, because I don't know if you remember, like you'd have shows like cop shows or like in the 80s, 90s and stuff, where it was always some woman trying to keep a baby and there was some rich family trying to steal. I know we had this agreement, but it's now my baby and I can't give her up. Do you know what I mean? They're like, we paid you, you know, and that's kind of becomes the stigma around all of that. And actually, if people look into surrogacy first, if you just look at the website and stuff like things have moved on, haven't they? You know,
yeah.
It's not all Hollywood scripts.
Yeah. And the people who are surrogates is not what media says. So, you know, unfortunately last year, my people were called deplorable, right? By certain leaders in the world of like surrogates and surrogacy, and we're taken advantage of, right? But I am a college educated woman who is the sole provider for my house with or without surrogacy. I have always, you know, been a provider, and I've always been above the median, you know, and so the average surrogate has a higher household income than the average American. The average surrogate has a higher college education than the average American, you know, and people don't realize that we are educated women.
When you and I were talking earlier, and I mentioned about stereotypes, all stereotypes, the outline is roughly true, but as soon as you apply just a little bit of application to what is the whole picture, and that this is a good example, because every TV show back in the day, when there was some form of surrogacy, it was always some single mother homeless woman who was a down and out, and some rich couple who had paid her money, but she now suddenly, no, I want to be a mother, this is my child. And that was always the image painted, that basically it was a poor, vulnerable woman who had nothing going for her being manipulated by rich people, or it was rich people being manipulated by somebody trying to get more money for a baby, right? Until you actually look into it a little bit and you realize, oh, these are just Hollywood scripts designed to pull on heartstrings and to make you take a side. There's not one of these would have been actually a true story. This is just somebody who's taken something, said, I wonder how I can make this a real heartbreaker and maybe win an Emmy Award, right? What do I need to do? And also, it's when you look now at, like you say, the screening process now to become a surrogacy, it's physical health, it's mental health, it's daily habits, it's what you will, you know, it's a real screening process. It's not $50,000 in a brown envelope given to you via a lawyer.
I mean, now do women, I mean, do some women, you know, does it happen? Like, I guess the question is, does it always in my situation? No, there are women who this really does make, you know, a big change in their family's life, right? Like, we do have our guidelines. You have to be financially stable, not on government assistance and things, but did it make a difference when I was working ministry and I was able to bring in, and now people are going to be shocked, but a whole $25,000. Now in today's world, for a first-time surrogate, it's like at least double that, right? But like back in the day when dinosaurs roamed the earth, 25,000 was huge for me. And did it cause me, you know, I wasn't going homeless, but did it help my family tremendously? Yes. Yeah. You know, and so I, like you said, there's these stereotypes, but they're not always true, and they're not how they're portrayed. And but Hollywood needs to make money, you know, to sell that stuff.
But it's a funny one, isn't it? Because respectfully to yourself and to Karina, as soon as the idea of compensation gets discussed, it's just a very eggshell conversation, which is one of the reasons I never asked you about it, right? Because Karina, you know what I mean? It's just, and I find it, like, to be frank, I find it incredibly amusing. Because why the hell would anybody do anything for nothing?
100%.
Right?
100%.
Because if somehow I got into a world where I met a girl, we got married, whatever, and decided we wanted a child, right? And for whatever reason, it couldn't happen. Okay, so we got to go down surrogacy, right? If I'm paying somebody out of my pocket to carry a child for me, you better make sure you're not doing manual labour. You better make sure you've got your feet up. You better make sure you're doing this, because I'm investing huge amounts of money. And if I have to spend extra money because I need you to be as relaxed as possible, and I need you to go to all your classes, and I need you to do your yoga, and I need you to have your massages, if that's what I have to pay for, that's what I have to pay for. And
I think it's because
when like, if you're going to be pregnant, it's a 9-month term, but the planning and process is like a 12-month term, right?
Longer.
No, but this is the point, right? So it's just like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to carry your child and work 60 hours a week to pay my bills?
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So
I'm afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, no, but this is, I honestly, I find it amusing that people even like, well, I bet she's making money out of it. I bloody well hope she is. I really do, because the responsibility on you is huge.
Yeah,
and the risk,
100%.
The risk for the parents is huge, and like you say, it's a minimum of 12 months. I take it to be long, right. Then I don't want you commuting for an hour every day. I don't want you working 40 to 50 hours a week in an office, or standing up on your feet in a hairdresser's, whatever it is. I'm not going to tell you you can't work if you love your job and your job brings you joy. I'm not going to tell you that. Yeah. But if you're somebody that has a really shitty, stressful job, right? It's like, hey, guess what? I can cover that. Don't worry. Because why would I want you to do all of that and give me a child and risk not having it? And I just, the weird mentalities of whenever money is raised or bought up or anything like that, people have the snobbery and the hypocrisy.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Because you think they'd do it out of love, really. Okay.
Well, I think what it is that people think that is an argument to say that there wasn't any other motives, right? Like, oh, because you accepted payment, you didn't do it to help a family. You didn't do it to be a good person. You did it for the money. And that both can be true, right? I can do it because I love pregnancy. I want to help a family, but I can also be proud that I was compensated. And I think what changed that for me was my first intended parent, when she was like, you don't need to be ashamed. I needed you to grow my family, and I needed her to help me elevate my family to goals that I had. And because we both had what the other needed, we were able to make each other's lives better.
But this is literally a business transaction where both parties are happy.
Yeah. Could you imagine telling the doctor, like, well, how much do you get paid? So you're not really doing it because you want to help people, right? Or a therapist, like, so you just do it for the money. Well, no, because no amount of money is worth those jobs unless you have some kind of heart in it. And when you don't, that's when you retire and burn out.
There's in the corner of my office is a boiler, and it's leaking, and it's getting replaced on Monday. And it's a 2-day job, right? And I know for a fact how much the plumber is charging me to replace the boiler. And he's not doing it for unicorns, hugs and wishes.
Right?
He's doing it to pay his bills.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not ashamed of that. And I wish that, compensation, we are putting a lot of risk on ourselves with pregnancy. Pregnancy can be dangerous,
This is just because this is the other thing. It's like we were talking about modern medication. You've only got to go back, I can't remember, before 100 years. 1 in 20 women died during childbirth. The problem is it's a bit like driving cars, right? People don't realize how dangerous driving cars are because airbags go off, right? And they have all these safety systems that deploy. It doesn't mean it's 100% success rate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
definitely.
Just because a huge amount of pregnancies are successful, right? And both mother and child are healthy. The things that people take for granted today with pregnancy, like one, fortunately for you, you're in America, because you wouldn't be doing this in other countries, on other continents, right? And if you look at death rates in other countries on other continents, you suddenly get a realization about how dangerous childbirth is. Yes. If you look at the simple things from incubators to medications to just power. Oh, look, there's no way the electric grid's going to fail while we're giving birth. All right?
Yes. Yeah.
There's all of these things that once something would have been a dangerous complication, people don't, it's just a routine procedure.
Yes.
And people don't understand that something that now is a routine procedure was once a life-threatening situation. It's just, we're so well practiced at it, and medication is so good. I mean, they could literally keep a child alive like when they're 6 months premature, and they'll just put them on life support. Do you know what I mean? That just 20 years ago, that wasn't possible. 30. No, 20, I know. You know, now if you're 3 or 4 months premature, your survival rate expectancy is like 95. It's something ridiculous. I don't know. I don't honestly know the figures.
No, it's really high. Yeah, I've looked into it before because we work in this field, right?
Yeah, of course.
5% of the time an embryo can split. So 5% of the time you put one in, you get two, right? And so we look at that, and I've seen a child be born at 26, almost 27 weeks, and be an amazing. He's now like 4.5. Years old. Like it's amazing what's available. And while they have that, I've still seen people, have lose their uteruses to, different items. And there's so much to it. And I think what it is that sometimes us as humans want to simplify things to be like, this is it. But it's not just one-sided. Like there are so many dimensions to everything, right? Yeah. That you have to really look at it and be open to it. And I think I've met a lot of people that were against surrogacy. I usually try to use humor, or my favorite is to kind of just put up a mirror, right? And let's look at what you're, like we had talked about it earlier. What are you kind of bouncing on, and you take one stance and you flip flop, right? Like, let's go. Oh, so it's not black and white in your life either. Like,
because this is what I mean. When I first spoke last time on surrogacy, I was just like fascinated because like both people, yourself and Karina, who come through, and I do want to speak to you about the ministry as well. The ministry, because it was just like has own children and works for the church, and I'm like in my head like, how the hell does this work? Like literally, how does that come about? And then I realised again, like I said to you earlier, I don't know anything about this, do I? I know absolutely nothing about it. And then when I look about what I did know about it, and I never checked out websites, I didn't do any research, because what I realized was all I literally knew was Hollywood TV scripts where some guy went to a motel with a woman, impregnated her, and that was surrogacy. Do you know what I mean? It's luckily, although I refer to myself as a Neanderthal, I had enough brain cells to think that's probably not what happened in these circumstances.
Well, try telling that to your Catholic grandma, right? Like she, I remember the first surrogacy. I remember her she was getting on my sister about something, and the look was just so like disappointed in my sister. My sister was her golden child. She was my step grandma. And so she's looking at my sister with this like disappointment. I said, "Hey, grandma, do you know what I'm doing?" And she said, "Oh, well, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to be a surrogate." And she's like, "Well, what is that?" And so I said, "Well, you know how Mary carried that baby, that was her egg. And then, and God, and when they have this baby," I said, but I'm going to do this in a lab, and she's like, "I don't understand it." I said, "Well, she said, I don't understand you people, right? Like, because now I'm you people because I'm disgusting." And so I said, "Well, people didn't feel comfortable loaning me to another man. And so we thought we would do this the proper way in a doctor's office, and they're going to put an embryo, a baby into me, and then I'm going to grow them." And she was just like mortified, like, "How could you do this?" And I remember the look she gave me, and I looked at my sister and I said, "You see that look?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Whenever she looks at you, it'll never be this bad. And you keep that thought in your head. You will never get this look." And she said, "Thank you." Like my sister was like, "Thanks." Like, people are not going to understand. And it's, obviously I understand the older generations not quite grasping the science of it and the morality of it, right? Like, I was working in ministry and I went to my board and I had to sign in my life. I had to sign this form to work at the school. I will not drink. I will not smoke. I will not fornicate, like whatever it is, right? I'm going to attempt to live a godly life. We're all sinners, but that's a whole nother podcast. And so
we can do a podcast on sinning if you want.
I'm every day. And so I go to this board and I said, hey, I want to be a surrogate. And they're like, talk to us about this, right? Like, help us understand what you're doing. And so I explained to them, I'm wanting to help this family. And so we talked about it. And obviously for me, I'm not the norm. I'm a minority. I am a Christian pro-life surrogate, right? And so what that means is that I'm not comfortable terminating unless my life is in danger. And even then, I would have to really think about it, right? If we can keep this baby alive, I've had a good life. If we can keep this baby alive as long as possible to go home to their parents, my family will be okay. And so we go through all of these different things. They go back, they spend about a week praying on it and looking through the Bible, and they come back and they say, honestly, the way that you've explained the situation you're going to be going through, we don't see an issue with you becoming a surrogate. Later on down the road, they had to have a conversation with us because it wasn't appropriate for my husband when the church members would say congratulations for him to tell them it wasn't his. So we did.
I can imagine that in church,
Yeah, the congratulations. Like, it's not mine. I'm like, it's not mine either, honey. You need to stop doing that at church because these people think I'm out here, Jezebel.
But I mentioned this because when I said to you, like, my mum is Irish, born and bred in Ireland, so I always refer to myself as an Irish Catholic. Right, because I was born and raised a Catholic, and so I refer to myself as an Irish Catholic, and because people who are from Ireland understand what an Irish Catholic is. You know what I mean? It's like, I to this day cannot go past a church without doing the sign of the cross. I cannot walk into a church and go past Jesus on the cross without doing the sign and kneeling, and I don't go to church. I have faith. You know what I mean? That is for another podcast, right? But there is indoctrination in my head that I cannot go past a church. I cannot go past a cross. I can't even go past a funeral procession without going like that. It's just, I don't know how to be anything else.
Yeah, and it's hard, and there are different, like, so for me, being Christian, and more on the, more like Baptist, non-denominational, we've bounced kind of back between them. There are people that struggle with what I did and whether it was right or wrong. But at the end of the day, my true beliefs is if it was successful, then it was a blessing, right? Like, if it wasn't, I mean, I know I get into things in life that I shouldn't, and I am allowed to do that to burn my hand on the stove. But this was one that, I really prayed on and felt at peace. And I feel like if I had peace about it and we did this, and I know that not everyone is a pro-life Christian, and not everyone is, having these things. I respect the other families, and I respect its right to choose her life and her decisions with free will, and I respect the families that are using surrogacy. So,
because that's the pro-life. The pro-life one is a strange one.
It's hard.
Well, the reason I say that is because it's not an issue in the UK. It's always been legal. Yeah. And I've never seen anyone protest about it. I'm not saying protests don't happen. I'm not saying people are happy with it. I'm not saying any of that. But it's not an agenda in politics or in the news. And it never has been for as long as I can remember. The only time I've ever heard about there being a problem with it is in the United States.
Well, we have a lot of problems with a lot of things, right? In the US.
Yeah. But everybody does. Everybody does. I'll tell you what I find strange, and I have said this, so I sound like a stuck record. Yeah. I was in California in 2019. It was my first time ever in the States, and one of the things that people kept asking me was like, what do you think of America? What do you think of America? And I was like, and I still say this now to American guests: the biggest problem with Americans is you have no idea how good your country is.
Oh, 100%.
And when I hear people complain about America, I know immediately you've never traveled anywhere.
Yeah.
And you are ignorant of what goes on in the rest of the world. You are ignorant. Does America have its problems? Yeah, guess what? There is no country without problems. But by God, America is still one of the greatest places in the world that you could be born. And if you think,
and I think it's because of how large we are. Like in Europe, you can travel a couple hours and go through countries, right? Like in the US, you can travel Texas for 16 hours and still be in Texas. Like,
but I can go anywhere in the UK. I can go anywhere on the European continent, and people think it's a crap place to live. But I tell you what, go and travel and see other places. I was in, and this is what I mean about people don't understand, right? You and I are talking across thousands of miles because you're in Hawaii and I'm in the United Kingdom, and people don't realize how many countries to this day still don't have running water and don't have electricity and don't have internet connections. And I remember it was 2016, and this is what I mean. It was like I was in Morocco on a surf holiday, right? So it's just like immediately that's my standard of living versus Moroccans. I'm traveling to your country to surf, and we were there on this beach, and I was along this road that you were driving along. You would always see locals like just holding fish, trying to sell fish on the side of the road. And there's these like little makeshift tents that you're just not paying any attention to really. And I remember we'd finished surfing, and I've got this bottle of water. I'm around the side of the surf van, and I've got this bottle of water, and I'm washing the sand off my feet before I put my sort of flip flops on or whatever it was. And this
with your bottle of water.
Yeah, just washing my feet off because the sand is irritating me. And I'm now in the car park, so I don't need sand on my feet because it's an inconvenience. And this man I come back round the back, and this man comes up to me, starts talking to me, and I've no idea what he's saying. And the guide says he's just asking, "Do you have any water to spare?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course, yeah," not thinking anything of it. And I just give him an unopened bottle of water that I bought from the supermarket in the local town that we were in. And this guy stands there and starts blessing me for my generosity. And at that point, it's explained to me that he doesn't have running water or fresh water because he lives permanently in one of those little makeshift shacks that's literally just a makeshift shack near the cliffs because he fishes every day, and if he can sell fish he has enough money and he can eat. And what he doesn't have is running water, any source of fresh water other than the generosity of tourists who give him a bottle of water. And he blesses me. And I'm thinking 2 minutes ago I was washing sand off my feet with the most precious commodity that this guy begs for.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I hear people complain about the United States, pardon my English, but sometimes I wish something terrible would happen to them, because you have no right to complain about the country you live in if you live in the United States of America. You're clueless about what the rest of the world is like.
Yeah, no, I mean, we do. I mean, everyone has
sorry for that little rant, but I can never help myself.
No, I agree. Yeah, people don't realize how blessed we are to be where we're at. It honestly, I think everyone has issues with their country. Everyone has things that can improve, but we are very blessed to be in this country.
And it's interesting as well, because, we're talking about the ministry and stuff and everything that you're able to do and the conflicts that other people have. And when you were saying that, I was thinking about it, and I was just like, if we're going to go down the road of Jesus and Satan, okay, is surrogacy brings life and joy and love. There's like literally the principles of the teachings of Jesus. So how is it not a blessing?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because when I think about it, it's just like, what is to be able to give life and family, like you and I were saying before we started recording, you reap what you sow. It's the basis of community, the basis of family, the basis of growth. So how is it not in that, if you look at it from that perspective, how is it not God's work?
Yeah. And that's why, talking about it, you can have the most perfect uterus. You can have the most perfect embryos. There's still a God factor. It's not 100% success. And sometimes it's 50% chance that it's going to be successful. And sometimes it's 70 and sometimes it's 20, like that they are estimating with these embryos. But I had my third journey, that second family. I had done an embryo transfer and the numbers were pretty low. And the doctor was like, hey, I don't think this is going to be a successful pregnancy. And I said, no, you keep your mouth shut. We're gonna pray on this. I'll take my medicines through the weekend and we'll try again on, Monday with another test. And so we do the test on Monday and it barely doubles. It has to double, but it barely doubles. I'm talking like it was a 19 and then it went to like a 38, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like maybe 40. It was like barely doubled. And he said, I'm going to get the parents, prepared because it was their only embryo. We had one shot at having this baby. And I said, okay, you can, but I'm going to keep praying and taking my meds. And we get to the heartbeat confirmation and the baby's measuring a couple days like early. And at that point of like the HCG, which is the pregnancy hormone raising slowly and everything, I nicknamed him Jonah. And I thought, well, if Jonah could survive in the belly of a whale for 3 days, I'm going to make sure this baby survives in the whale. And so we had named him Jonah the whole pregnancy. And sure enough, 38 and a half weeks, here came his name. Never was Jonah, by his parents, but he will always be Jonah.
It's just as soon as you said Jonah and the belly of the whale, it's like you're literally referring to yourself as the whale in the story. And I just...
Yes. Why not? I was...
Absolutely. But you understand why that amused me so much.
But you have to find humor, though. I think you have to find humor because there's a lot of people that don't understand it. There's a lot of people that judge it or look down upon me as a surrogate. But the truth of the matter is like, they don't pay my bills. They do not bring anything to my life.
Yeah.
And so I respect them for their opinions. They have their right to their opinions. Everyone has their free speech. But your opinion of me doesn't affect my life.
No, it's good. How has your faith helped you?
I think going through the hard time with that last journey, just trusting and believing that one, that child was going to make it, and two, that child was going to be okay. That, hey, it doesn't have to, things don't always have to go right. I think the other part of my faith is that knowing that being vulnerable and open and sharing my story is stronger, right? It's strength to be able to be open and transparent and to share. And then a lot of times with our surrogacy journeys, there have been times where all we could do is pray and hope that pregnancy would come out safe, or that the child would be okay, or that the parents would make it on time, things like that. And I think that's where it comes into play, is like on those hardest days when we do have losses, we have miscarriages, or we have failed transfers, that I have to trust and believe that it's going to work out for his good. So I think that's definitely where it comes in, is just the faith of like believing these things can push us through, and also being able to sit with people in their sadness and it doesn't have to always be pretty. Like we can sit together in sadness and anger. We can be angry for a situation. We can be sad for a situation. I think just doing life together and being open and transparent has been the best part of my faith. I think that's where I've made the most connections is in that situation and doing life. Another one is that I had an applicant, and I prayed when we opened Surrogate First, I prayed that I could stay true to my morals and my beliefs and still be in this field as someone who could help. And I remember a surrogate applicant applying with us, and in the application process, she found out she was pregnant, and she called to be like, I don't know what to do. Should I just terminate and then I can continue on the process? And I never want to push my beliefs on someone, but I was able to just share, like, how do you truly feel? Like, are you doing this? Like, surrogacy is going to be here forever. You're in your mid-20s. You can do this another 20 years. Are you going to look back on this time and be thankful and okay if you make that decision? Or do you think that you will live with regret and the thought of a surrogacy is going to be a bitter moment for you for the rest of your life. And so she went on, she came back and she said, hey, I've decided to keep my child. And then about a year later called and said, hey, could I be a surrogate? And to know that I was able to not take money, like I think people over profits is my goal. And so, yeah, would it have been nice to have a surrogacy arrangement with her and she was going to be a good surrogate and we're going to do this? Or was it more important to share my heart and just have her think on like, what is it? What's your choice? Like, what are your consequences and your benefits? And so I think that helps me to know that in those hard moments, I'm not going to choose profits over people. I'm going to choose people.
And that's a great place to stop. Thank you very much. And that was Ashley and her story and journey on surrogacy. And again, it's another perspective, another reason. And I think when I reflect on this, it always comes back to that gift, isn't it? It's the gift of life and being able to give life, and how we choose who can and can't have that good fortune, that luck, that blessing. I don't know. And Ashley and I did carry on talking afterwards. We are going to do another podcast either later in the year or the beginning of next year, and it'll be probably a discussion about our faith, sinning, what it means, what it doesn't mean. So I hope you will tune in for that. And as always, for everybody that supports the podcast, I really do appreciate it. Thank you for everybody that subscribes, listens, watches, and shares. It is appreciated. It really is. And please, wherever you are, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you.